Did you know that online streaming is becoming the most powerful means of reaching a broader audience? Even major networks are transitioning from cable television to online streaming platforms. BGK is a Christian online TV network that is ahead of the curve. We specialize in virtual broadcasting, allowing leaders to broadcast right from their homes while sitting in the comfort of their customized studios. And as if that wasn't enough, you can have our very own broadcast production for as low as $25 per week. Yes, I said it, $25 per week. Wouldn't you love to have your studio right in the comfort of your home? Well, call us at 877-386-6207 and become a broadcast partner with BGK Broadcast Network.
Hey, this is Apostle Sharon Peters Ruff. I'm the host of Living the Good Life in HD. Listen, do you have an inspirational word, or do you have something that you would like to feed the body of Christ with? Why don't you be a part of the BGK family? Listen, call BGK now, the BGK Network, and get on board. All right, I'll look for you soon.
Are you looking for a marketing company that can capture your vision? Branding yourself or your business is no small task. That's why at Flaming Sword Productions, we offer unique visual concepts that are designed to meet all of your campaign needs. We provide a one-stop business solution to successfully brand your business, ministry, or organization just the way you envisioned it. Our designs range from banners, booklets, and book covers to e-promotions, logos, seals, and promotional t-shirts, and so much more. We are fast and affordable. Are you ready to let us create your unique brand identity? If so, contact us today at 312-863-0597 or email us at flamingswordwitty@gmail.com.
Hi and welcome. My name is Sam Bujikuma, and this is another episode of In View with Sam and DiNardo. I'm Sam, and this is DiNardo.
DiNardo.
Today we're going to be talking about stopping the demand in human trafficking and all the ways in which you can help. Now, human trafficking has become the second fastest growing crime around the world, and we believe that if you can stop the demand, the supply will automatically start to diminish. So today we want to talk about some of the ways that that happens. But first, we want to talk about what buyers and traffickers actually look like. So recently, the Demand Abolition Group created a study based on research that they conducted about what a buyer of human trafficking looks like, and whether that is human trafficking for sex trafficking or labor trafficking. They came up with some different demographics, and those demographics are pretty disturbing, to be fair, because the average age of a human trafficker is over 35. The average income of a purchaser of human trafficking is actually over 6 figures a year. And oftentimes they live, in married with children, and they actually purchase over 100 miles from home. So very rarely are they purchasing in their home city, but most often more than 100 miles from home. And, obviously this causes a variety of questions to be asked. And I know that you've been working with a lot of folks with Dads Against Trafficking. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so part of the reason what Sam just said, that buyers tend to buy, just want to touch on right quickly, about 100 miles from home, is because the mindset is if it is not done close to home, then it's not something that can affect their lives or can affect anyone's life that is important to the buyer. When the reality is it actually does affect lives. It not only affects lives, it affects communities. The life of the one being trafficked, as well as the community that is now there to have to pick up the pieces from the buyer now having gone back home and is back in his world. Part of stopping the demand is really just we as men, and I'm talking really really to men today, focusing on our role and our responsibility in our communities. I would say we have a very clear purpose and a very clear call and a mandate, if you will, to stand up for our communities, for our young children and the women in our communities as well, so that those who would want to victimize them would think twice. Really, it is about men coming together and forming a coalition, if you will, a bond where they are canvassing their community. If something occurs or happens, they are ready to go out and do a search. And to, the thing is that when someone who is about to victimize another individual, be it trafficking or whatever the case may be, if they believe that there's going to be trouble, if you will, after the fact, they think twice about that. And what do I mean by that? If they believe that the community is going to band together, come together in order to do a search, come together in order to petition, to come together to make law enforcement aware or even to take further action, they're less likely to move in those communities. And that's where men have a vital role within those communities to stand up and say, you know what, not today, not in our communities.
And I think it's important that on top of understanding what a buyer looks like, that we also understand what traffickers look like. So there's several different kinds of traffickers, right? So the first kind is what you see on the movie Taken, right? So if you've watched the movie Taken with Liam Neeson, you will see that, there's this idea that people are kidnapped and forced into trafficking. But the truth of the matter is that that's only about 13% of trafficking victims who are taken in that way. And certainly that was my first introduction into trafficking, but it is actually not the norm. The second kind of trafficker is one that we see far more often, and we call him the Romeo trafficker. And what he does is he coerces women into believing, or even children many times, that he's their boyfriend and that he loves them and that he's going to do anything for them. And actually, one of the very first survivors that we had the pleasure of serving at Rahab's Daughters was 13 when her mother's boyfriend tried to rape her. And when she told her mom what had happened, her mom basically put her out, saying that, stop messing with my sort of, boyfriend kind of thing. And she ended up on a street corner, and she was living there on this park bench. And a gentleman, 4 times her age, so she was 13, he was in his 40s, basically started buying her McDonald's for lunch every day. And then he took her to get her nails done and then her hair done, and then he took her home. And, everything was fine for a little while until he came home and said that he'd lost his job and now she needed to pay back everything that he had given her. And she's obviously saying, well, I go to school, I don't have a job, I don't know how to do that. And so he says to her, well, I've got a friend coming over, and when he comes over, do whatever he says and he will give you money. And so she's turned out and forced into prostitution for survival more than anything else. And, but obviously she believed that he loved her like a father and a boyfriend eventually. Turned out that he didn't. And that type of Romeo trafficker is very much more what we see. And they're not just finding people on street corners anymore. They're going online, right?
They are going online. They are reaching out and making themselves available to those who are most vulnerable. What's happening today with our young people in particular, whatever's going on in their lives, they're posting on social media, aren't they? They are posting where they've gone, where they've been, where they're going to go. They're posting that they've had an argument or a fight with their parents, how the parents are unreasonable and being difficult and has grounded them. And all a trafficker really needs to have is the person being in a vulnerable state. And I got to tell you that if a young lady wanted to go to a party and her parents have told her no and they have grounded her, That's the only thing this trafficker needs to gain the trust and the confidence of this young lady. Try to poison her against her parents, and to show her how he really cares for her and how he would never treat her that way and how he would treat her like the woman that she is. And I'm sure Sam would agree with me that the Romeo trafficker is the most difficult and complicated of the traffickers, because not only is fear and coercion in the mix, but there's feelings, there's emotion. And whenever someone has an emotional tie with someone, whether it's legitimate or in this case not, it's always very difficult to break that chain, that curse, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Recovering from a Romeo trafficker is very difficult. But we have another few kinds of traffickers. So we have what we call the CEO trafficker. And the CEO trafficker most often preys on folks who are in need of money to get ahead. So people who need to pay their college tuition, people who need to pay their medical bills, people who need to pay their car payments, their house payments. And he says, look, I'm going to help you, do this. And in the end, you're going to be rich. And so this is totally worth it. And it always starts off small, right? It starts off with the, why don't you clean your house in your underwear with a webcam on? Or why don't you, dance in front of this camera, or, go on OnlyFans, or whatever the first step is. It's almost always a virtual step these days that leads into a physical situation in which they end up being blackmailed with the virtual information, right? So we most often see this in the suburbs with women going through divorce, right? Who have a certain lifestyle that they have created for themselves. And then when they get financially cut off due to the divorce proceedings, they end up without the ability to support their family in the way in which they were accustomed. And most women will do whatever it takes to take care of their kids. And so the idea of, cleaning their house on webcam in their underwear doesn't seem that crazy till that is used to blackmail them. And they're told, well, we're going to show this to your husband's divorce attorney unless you do this or unless you do that. And very quickly it becomes a very ugly situation.
Yeah, it does, because she's trapped at that point. What else is there for her to do other than to go along with that? And so she won't report it. She won't tell anyone about it. She'll just go along with it and hope that nothing comes out of it. But here's the thing. How trustworthy do you think traffickers really are? Do you really think when that time comes that this information isn't going to be leaked anyway? Because here's the truth. If they withhold the information, then she's free to go. He has nothing else on her. And when I say he, I want it understood that traffickers can be women as well, not always men. But so they'll still hold on to this information and hold it over the person's head so that they always have something to threaten them with. And social media, like you said, is a dangerous field because it's so hard to, in many instances, not just stop young people or women who are in desperate situations from posting everything, but it can be sometimes so hard to track down the trafficker because they can hide behind so many faces, wouldn't you say?
I think that certainly tracking down the traffickers is much harder because they're definitely hiding amongst layers of situations, right? And particularly in my situation, when you're dealing with organized crime, you just don't ever really see the face of who is actually in control of that because there's so many layers in between. But what we find with these CO traffickers is that they most often make it start out to be a business arrangement that's in your benefit. And usually in the early days, the benefits work in your favor. You get your college tuition paid, you make your house payment, your car payment, whatever. But what happens later is that you end up in a situation that you just can't get out of. And we see that time and time again, where it's just a spiral into trafficking, and then it becomes a lifestyle, and they do at times end up making the family situation significantly worse as a result of this. But the last type of trafficker that we see are interfamilial traffickers. These are, spouses, uncles, aunts, parents who are forcing another family member into trafficking. And we see this stem out of poverty more often than anything else. But and this is how a lot of pieces of the human trafficking puzzle are actually social issues that we need to be addressing. Because if women had more opportunities, then we would definitely have less women going through divorce in a situation where they've given up their careers or never went to college in support of their spouses, or never had any work skills, because that is often the reason that they're unable to re-enter the workforce.
This is true. This is true. And they're really held back, particularly where family members are trafficking them, because there's a such thing as a generational trafficking as well, where the mother has done it, the grandmother has done it, and the father, the cousins are groomed, even brothers are groomed to carry on the family tradition. These women are not able to be productive in life the way you would think they should be able to. They're not, as you said, able to follow through with education, follow through with a career. This is where they're stuck. This is how they are to live their lives, and this is all they know. Sometimes it's all they know, and so we also have to remember that in perspective, we can't sometimes change their minds, because for them this is the norm. And can you talk to us a little bit about what that's like when they feel that it's the norm?
I mean, on average, they say 83% of children born into homes where prostitution is occurring will end up being prostituted themselves, right? And we've certainly seen some very young victims over the years. In fact, when I first started fighting human trafficking, I was in Europe and working for a foundation behind the scenes. My day job is in software, and at the time, we were doing, a lot of sort of data science type things to understand where trafficking was happening, particularly child trafficking. And in doing that, what we understood was that a lot of child trafficking actually started because the parent had been trafficked at some point or was being trafficked presently. And so it became the norm that the kids saw and were sort of, desensitized to, even though, as horrific as it is, they just don't know any differently. And so the interfamilial trafficking can actually be some of the most detrimental, because the kids are started off at a very young age being, sexually abused, or at many times labor trafficked, right? So that's the other side of this. We see kids out there on the fields in agricultural areas picking cotton, picking vegetables, picking strawberries, and the whole family is out there because the situation is that they get paid so very little for doing that it literally takes the whole family out there picking together to make enough to see ends meet, right? And it's not just the agricultural industry, but they're definitely one of them. We see it, and not just in the vegetable and fruit industry. Like, we see it on farms with animals, and we see it in so many different
Yeah,
places.
yeah. Truck stops as well. It's literally everywhere. And so part of what I'm all about, if I can just jump into that now, Dads Against Trafficking, it's really, like I said, men, if you see yourselves in a fatherly role, a fatherly capacity, even if you don't have children of your own, some of the things we have to do is have those difficult conversations within our households. I think too many times we don't want to have the conversations because they're uncomfortable, or we're afraid of what we may actually find out. I would rather have those conversations, and I would ask you to as well, because it's better to know ahead of time. That way you can deal with the situation. What is it that you need to know? Well, if there's a young person in your family who's interested in being a trafficker, or who has had thoughts of buying, if you're having these conversations, then maybe you can find this out ahead of time, and you can guide them the right way. Because here's the thing about having young people. If you don't take the lead, someone else will. And I would much rather someone who loves them and cares for them and someone who wants to guide them according to scripture take the lead on what it is that they are thinking and what they're contemplating on doing. Dads Against Trafficking is really about promoting a protective place for our young people. It is dads. We come together, we rally, we talk about intervention, we talk about what we can do as men to not just go out in the communities to make a difference, but to start that impact within our homes. We're having those conversations with our sons, with our daughters, with our spouses. We're educating them on what to look for, what trafficking is all about. But we're also a compassionate and sensitive men, if you will. Not sensitive in the sense that it may appear weak, but we're sensitive because we want to have our children to feel free enough to communicate with us anything, no matter how bad or no matter how ridiculous they may feel that it is. Because the best way we can be effective in the community, we have to be effective within our homes.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the key things that Dads Against Trafficking does is it works to stop the demand. And stopping that demand has a lot to do with educating each other, right? So as Nara said, those conversations are critical. Have you talked to your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your cousins about, you know, are they paying a living wage to people? Are they making sure that they're not exploiting people by, you know, making them work for less than minimum wage? Are we educating people that, you know, our sons do not need to go to brothels to, you know, become men, that's not how that works?
Yeah.
And are we educating them as to what it looks like to respect a woman and to respect each other? Because unfortunately now 30+% of human trafficking victims are boys, right? And they are often forced to do activities that are against their preferences, causing them to be, you know, basically suicidal. In fact, the number one way that a trafficking victim who is male exits human trafficking is by suicide. In contrast, the number one way that a woman exits is by homicide. So we definitely want to look at these, you know, situations and stop the demand, because if there's no demand, if nobody's buying, then nobody's selling, folks. It's a natural economic situation, right? It's economics 101, a supply and demand curve. If there's no demand, the supply will diminish to nothing. So how do we stop the demand? Well, first and foremost, you can help with our HEMAD campaign, which kicks off November 22nd. And Donato, do you want to tell them a little bit about HEMAD?
Yeah, HEMAD is really a collection of guys who have decided to stand up and do something and to be very public about it, very intentional about it. We lead men who are interested, who want to make a difference, to watch a very short clip, and they then sign a pledge that they will not buy sex, they will not participate in it, and that they would share this with other men. They will share it in their conversations. Part of being a man who makes a difference is what type of conversations are we having? And if we're not a direct person within that talk, how are we responding when we're hearing things that we know aren't necessarily correct, aren't right, aren't respectful, aren't kosher? What are we doing? So in taking this pledge, men are saying, you know what, I'm going to be very public about this. I'm going to be very intentional in letting other people know where I stand, what my thought processes are about this, and that I am not going to buy sex. There's a slogan out that real men don't pay for sex. No man should pay for sex because it is demeaning. It's more than just about being a real man or whatever the case may be. It's about having respect for other human beings, whether you see yourself as a man, you see yourself as a child, it doesn't matter. We respect other people. We understand that this is a creation that God has given us. God was intentional about about creating this individual. God is intentional about his plans and his purpose for this individual. And we want the men to be intentional about our role in making sure that we safeguard our daughters, our nieces, and even our nephews and sons from this crime. And I just want to touch on right fast, if I will, just in case someone has a question as to why is the men population, the boys who are caught in this, why they commit suicide. And I'll just say that briefly. It is because of the shame that is associated with them being trafficked. It's very natural. It's sad to say, but it's very natural that a woman would be abused or taken advantage of or sexually assaulted. And they are more open to have communication, and the public in general is more open to hearing this from a woman. But when it happens to a man, we in general are not very open and accepting to hearing a man say that he has been tricked or he has been taken advantage of or he has been trafficked. And so it's the shame, the embarrassment that his manhood has been taken away. And this is why the boys have a higher rate of suicide.
And there's definitely a way that you can help with this. So first and foremost, on November 22nd, you can tune into our website, and there we will be launching, in conjunction with our partners Convergence Resource Center, their HEMAD campaign. And HEMAD is basically a way that you can begin to spread the word to men by taking the pledge. Donato will be leading one of the pledges, one of those hours that day, and there will be somebody leading every hour where men can come and take the pledge. So we definitely encourage you to get involved. But there's plenty of other ways that you can help stop the demand. And one of them is by reporting everything that you see that doesn't make sense, that could be human trafficking, to the human trafficking hotline. And that is 1-888-37-37-888. That is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And you can report there. You can go and text them at 233-733, and you can also report it to us on our website. Just fill out the Contact Us page, and we'll be happy to assist. That's www.rahabsdaughters.org. So please stay tuned to your favorite podcast platform, the BGK Network.org, for our next episode. Just listening here really helps to, stop the fight against human trafficking, because knowledge is power.
It really is power. And as I've said before, we absolutely can't do it without you. This really does take a village.
It does. You can also follow us on social media at rahabsdaughters.org on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. We're also on Twitter, so feel free to connect with us there. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to chat with you. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.